Okay, good evening, everyone. This is the Personnel Committee of the Albany County Legislature, August 28th, 2019. I'm your Chairman, Mark Grimm. To my left is Vice Chair Lynn Lakakis, and I'd ask each of the members to introduce themselves if they would.
Ray Joyce, District 15. Rick Touche, 37th District.
Travis Stevens, 31st.
Allison McLean Lane, District 14.
Okay, thank you very much. First order of business, approval of the minutes. So I have a motion. Mr. Touche, second.
Okay, you got me.
Well, you see, look, I don't know about that one. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, unanimous. Item 1, requiring the Department of Human Resources to initiate a pay equity study. Sponsor's not present. It's tabled. Item 2, promoting an Albany County employment and promoting a diverse workforce. Sponsor not present. It's tabled again. Item 3, confirming the appointment of a member of the Albany Convention Center Authority.
How we doing, Mr. Chairman?
Good evening, gentlemen. Name and title, please.
Matt Cannon, Director of Intergovernmental Affairs, County Executive's Office.
Okay. Matt, first, to give us some idea what your expectations are if you're given this appointment.
Sure. So the reason why we're looking to make this change, as we all know, the Capitol Center in the past couple of years has shifted from a construction project to a functioning facility. And the focus right now is on business and economic development generation throughout the county. And so while George is exceptional at the construction projects, I thought it'd be appropriate to get a little more plugged in with the business community and looking to make that switch. I apologize about missing everyone last month. Was on a pre-scheduled family vacation. So.
George, you mean George Penn, who was previous appointee, and you're the appointee of County Executive McCoy. There is an issue among a number of members in terms of how the hotel tax is divvied up. And I wondered, how are you going to approach that if you're on the convention?
Sure. So, kind of two different ways to look at the hotel tax. I think a lot of us are in agreement that the way the hotel tax is constructed, it was designed for another facility that was going to be substantially larger than what we have. And on that note, the legislation for it, as we all know, comes up every 2 years. So coming off of last June when it was renewed, we had some very productive conversations with the local state delegation about looking at that formula and revisiting it of what is a fair distribution for the county, because as we mentioned, that 3 points right now was for a facility that was going to be about 3 to 4 times what this one is.
When you say 3 points, the hotel tax is 6% on everyone who stays in the hotel. And it's generated in the county, and it's money, more of that money we'd like to keep.
Correct. The one thing, so while that, we've had very productive conversations, it's going to be coming up again next June. We do have to note that this role for the board really doesn't do anything with the hotel tax, but I do think it's important to know that where we stand on it, and I think we're all in agreement of having that conversation in 2020 off a formula that was designed in, what was it, originally in the 90s?
Yeah, 96.
So,
94.
Yeah, I know, it's a state legislation will be required. Our hope is that we can push in that direction. And of course, the Convention Authority is a state entity. So you'll be our voice on that, and hopefully a strong one in terms of moving that dial a little bit on that program, on that formula. And yes, any questions for Mr. Campbell?
I have one.
Come on, I can't hear.
I'm sorry.
Where do you live?
I live in Latham. What are we email and address? I live in Latham.
Yes, he's an Albany County resident. Let's stipulate that. No, there's a lot of addresses in Albany County that are not.
Yeah,
I have a Schenectady address. It's crazy. Yeah. Okay, anyone else? All right, motion to move? Motion to move. Mr. Touche, seconded by Mr. Joyce. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Congratulations, Matt. Good luck to you.
Mark, I had an abstention on that.
Oh, abstained. Travis abstained. Steve. Okay, I'd like to take...
Hi, Lucy.
Okay. I'd like to take 5 out of order if I could, because they'll leave the insurance for our last discussion. Any objection? Do we need a motion for that? No. All right, item 5 is confirming the appointment of Director of the Real Property Tax Services, that's Maggie Alex. She's now being appointed she filled out an interim term, now she's appointed to a full 6-year term. Are there any questions for the members? Motion to move this? Mr. Joyce, seconded by Mrs. Ally McLean, and all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Maggie. Okay, Resolution 4, move to rescind Resolution 217, which would cut the time required to get health insurance from the county from 20 to 15 years of service. The sponsor, Minority Leader Moriello, is present to speak to this. Mr. Moriello.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I've submitted resolution to rescind Resolution 217 of 2019 for a number of reasons. First of all, this was passed without its required fiscal impact statement, in contradiction to Rule 10 of our legislative rules of order. And for those that are listening and will be listening to the video on this, Rule 10 states, all resolutions and local laws with financial or budgetary implications of $5,000 annually or more shall contain a fiscal impact statement. So therefore, we just violated our own rule. We have a rule that says we have to provide an impact statement. We need to know how much this is going to cost the county and how much it's going to cost the taxpayers. It's this body that passes the budget. It's not our money, it's the taxpayers' money, and the taxpayers, I think, are under the understanding that when we spend any of their money, when we're managing their money, it's up to us to properly manage the
It
accounts.
said how much it was going to cost.
To make sure that
Order, can I say order, please? Go ahead.
when I think the taxpayers understand that, we're here to manage their funds, it's their money, it's not our money. So therefore, when we spend any of this money, we have to justify not only what we're spending, we have to make sure that what we're doing is reasonable and prudent. And we did not receive any type of fiscal analysis, and so therefore, it's very hard for us to determine what this is going to cost. And we've had estimates from anywhere from, or I say up to $2.1 million a year on this. So I think it's important that we go back and we take a look at this, and a fiscal impact statement is submitted before this would go back before the body. Second of all, back on July 19th, we received a memo from the county attorney, and he had some concerns about this. And I'll just read a couple of sentences really quick. The resolution was written improperly, as written, improperly indicates that the health insurance requirement benefit set forth in the rules and regulations applies to non-union employees only. The change to the rules and regulations in this legislation impacts retired employees that are members of collective bargaining units. So therefore, we were told in discussions during the committee that this legislation or this resolution was for non-union employees. Well, the county attorney has a different opinion, saying that this also could be for union employees as well. If that's the case, that's going to change, again, the financial impact to the county. He also states, the resolution as written reduces the years of service required to become eligible for health insurance benefits in retirement, but is not specifically limited to active employees. Thus, employees have already left the county service could be eligible for this benefit at an undefined cost to the county. And one important sentence he says here is, these costs have not been calculated and considered by the legislature, as no formal impact analysis was provided. So what we have now is we have the issue of no financial analysis being done. We have some confusion in the legislation because of how it's written. I think we could be opening ourselves up for a possible lawsuit. And just a little fact here, as far as our health costs are concerned, the county spends more than $50 million on health insurance, which is 7.3% of our budget. It's quite a bit. If this were to cost the legislature up to $2 million, any additional spending that is $950,000 or more would increase our levy by 1%. So we're looking at a good 2% increase in our levy if this were to be the case. So what I am saying is, we really don't know how much this costs. We don't know how it's to be funded. We're not sure how the county executive would implement this because his council isn't quite sure how to implement this because of the language in the legislation. So it's better that we just rescind this, and if the sponsors want to, they could come back with a legislation in the future that is not only clear, but also has the financial impact statement, so we know exactly what we're voting on in the future.
Okay, questions from members? Mr. Greenaway.
I don't, one of the points I want to make, what you said is, many times in municipalities, including counties, health insurance costs are actually about, can be upwards of 15 to 20%. Now, I'm not saying that the 7+% is not significant, because it is. We are self-insured, so we tend to have lower costs. Our reserves are, which is great for our self-insured, is only about 11%. So we're pretty lean on our health insurance costs. That being said, I did add myself to this resolution, and the reason I did so, I do have concerns about the lack of a very specific formal fiscal impact statement. I do believe that if I was a member of a bargaining unit that did not receive the same, 15-year option, and I was upset about it, I would file a lawsuit. And considering,
If I can interrupt you, Mr.
Yeah.
Plant.
Hold on a second. No, wait a minute.
Wait a minute, I have to.
You're out of order.
Wait a minute.
Finish your thought, okay?
Wait a minute, as counsel to this committee,
You're
no.
You're out of order.
As
Finish your thought.
counsel to this committee under Article 14 of the Civil Service Law, the negotiation of any of these collective bargaining agreements is the purview of the county executive. I strongly caution against any member of this committee making a statement here tonight in this committee that would walk into the purview of the Civil Service Law. You're walking into Taylor law issues, and it is my legal advice that you do not discuss that at all in this committee as a point-ending comment.
well, I appreciate your
And
advice.
if you do so, you do so against the advice of counsel here tonight on camera.
Well, I appreciate that.
Just for future reference, do not interrupt a member. while
Hey,
they're
Mr.
speaking.
Graham, I have to.
Do not do that again.
Mr. Graham, I have to, as counsel to this.
You've heard from the chair. Don't do that again.
Look,
Ally, go ahead.
the chair does not understand the legal implications of
Well-
what we're discussing.
So I'll stay away from that. However, as a point, I did vote no on this. I did bring up that I would, most municipalities I have encountered do have a flat policy. And it is my experience as an administrator, which I have been for 15 years now, that I usually wait to give myself the best benefit before everybody else has it. That being said, that is my personal feeling on being an administrator. I'm not trying to walk into legal matters. That is my personal opinion. And hence why I'm supporting this legislation. So thank you very much.
Other members? Mr. Joyce?
Yeah, I thought the county executive did provide financial information specific to the cost of this, and the county attorney clarification to the point about the, whether or not it was written properly, specific to limited active employees.
Not that we're aware of. In fact, if
I
you'd
thought
like to see
it was
the,
offered in this committee, though, right before we passed it out.
That's incorrect. The numbers which were provided to these committees counted because non-unions couldn't be brought out specifically, and we're happy to provide those numbers again.
what numbers were provided?
There were two sets of packets, two separate sets of packets, Mr. Moriello, with an in-depth analysis of the financial impact. If you reviewed it, you would realize that the numbers that were provided included union numbers. I would suggest that the committee take the time to look at those numbers again. I'm fully confident what you will find is not only were union numbers provided, a deeper analysis of this matter was conducted than any I've seen in the 15 months I've been here. And that is
Oh,
off record.
then why did
Let me
the
just
county?
add if I could, Frank.
Actually, I haven't given up the floor yet.
Well, I just, a comment.
I haven't given up the floor
I have a
yet.
comment to the council.
Talking rules of order to our
Yeah,
council,
wait a minute.
let's talk rules of order, but I haven't given up the
Go
floor
ahead,
yet.
finish. Go ahead.
So, that being said,
I'm glad you're good for the rules. I can appreciate that
well,
in the further.
I'm just listening here, taking some notes. But that being said, if the information's out there, right, just to resend this when the information's already there. Why don't we just ask for the information that's already been provided, so we can review it and see if the information is not there, then we can rescind it. I mean, why?
Well, it's interesting because if it was provided, why wasn't it provided to us? I mean,
It was
I never
provided to this
saw it.
committee, though.
But are you talking about the five-page handout that was included in the agenda? Because that did not give a specific number on how much all this was cost, and it was challenged in this committee. So if that's your idea of a fiscal impact, then we have not received a true fiscal impact statement.
I'll remind the committee as well, under our rules, and Mr. Morello read the rules, there is nothing in that rule that takes away the discretion of this body to waive that requirement. It is not a fatal defect. You can read the rules clearly. There's no fatal defect to not having a fiscal impact statement. That's clear as day.
Well, I thought we had that.
Oh, no, the fiscal, he's referring to a specific sheet of paper that says fiscal impact on the top of it.
Also the cost.
There were over 20 pages of fiscal analysis provided to this committee and to the legislature over a 2-month period in conjunction with the county executive's office. Those are facts.
How much is this cost? Can you give me that number?
How much does it cost? So, Mr. Graham,
That's a single number. What is that number?
No, so this isn't a simple
You
question.
don't have that number?
No, no one has that. You have, wait, first of all, let me back up.
That's my point.
Let me back up. This is Resolution 356. The burden is on Mr. Moriello to bring in information, not the other way around.
Well, you have just conceded that
No, I've conceded
no number
nothing.
was ever put on that fiscal impact.
No, that's
And
not what I said.
we have voted on legislation that we don't even know how much it costs. In
That's-
fact, we're not even clear who it applies to, because we have the county attorney who contradicts what our position was on the committee.
Mr. Grimm. Actually, go ahead.
Mr. Mendick,
I'd like to just bring up another point. When Mr. Camiso brought this to us, both in personnel and in audit and finance, and I am not a member of the personnel committee, but I am on audit and finance, the rationale for bringing this whole thing about was as a recruitment tool, that he felt that this would help to bring people from other governmental municipalities who saw this as a benefit that they might be able to pick up health insurance after 15 years rather than 20 years. Unfortunately, I think it has exactly the opposite impact in that we now have incentivized our existing employees who have 15 years of service, who know our operations, to take early retirement. And so the rationale for this whole, I'll be kind, this whole resolution is just not valid. It's just incorrect. And for that reason alone, we should rescind it. Because what we're going to do is we are going to be taking the people who are most valuable to the day-to-day operations of county government here in Albany and telling them, you now have a better opportunity to retire early than you did yesterday. Thank you.
any other members?
Yes, and understanding what
Ms.
you
McKnight.
just described in audit and finance, wouldn't it be wise for us to think about sending it back to get another financial analysis and get that data you just spoke about and get clear in all of our minds and think before we vote it down? Let's vote just to, what'd you say, like to table it for now?
Well, we got a few more people here from Lucy.
Oh, I didn't know two more were speaking.
I was gonna make a motion to move it.
Well, I'd like to make a comment. As far as, it's more than just a fiscal analysis.
Yes.
Because it's also the language in the.
Language,
In the resolution as well. And
okay.
the county attorney brought that to us, to our attention, that the language here isn't clear.
I'll
So
remind the
it's-
committee, not even the county attorney suggested rescinding this. No one has suggested rescinding this in the executive's office, the county attorney's office, the Albany County Legislature, with the exception of the minority. No one has suggested rescinding this.
Also, Mr. Canizero,
I did.
this body can, I guess if it wants to, it can waive the requirement to submit a fiscal impact statement?
No, no, what I'm saying, you misunderstand. In voting to approve this by a 26 to 11, an overwhelming majority, they as one body spoke to waive that requirement by a 26 to 11 majority.
Okay, they spoke to override that. Now, but that, our job is to keep an eye on the county's finances. So, in my opinion, we didn't do our job when it came to overseeing the county's finances and really analyzing this to see how much it's going to cost us. So I feel that because we really don't know what the actual true cost is here, and the language may be a little bit confusing, that we should rescind this and let the sponsors come back with another resolution cleaning up the language and with a true fiscal impact statement, and then the legislature can vote on that.
Let me just say what I think one of the fundamental flaws of this process. I believe this issue should have been negotiated between the unions and the chief executive. That's where all this should have been hashed out. That's what they typically do when it comes to such benefits. They hash it out, they come to agreement, and they bring it before the legislature to vote on it. We approve it or disapprove it, depending on what we were concerned. I think that was a fundamental mistake. We should have left this to negotiation between the unions and the county executive. Ms. McLean-Plain.
Is recruitment a problem in our union or non-union employee base? Can anyone answer that question?
We haven't seen it here, personnel. It's tough to get positions filled.
But specifically in our appointed positions?
Both, yes.
Commissioners?
Well,
Those are non-exempt.
Yeah.
when you're competing with New York State and the federal government.
No, Mike, but I mean, we're saying this is a recruitment tool, and, you know, I guess I would love to see, but, you know, the horse seems to be already out of the gate, as it were. Where our recruitment problem is in our non-union employees, which if this was the purpose of this legislation to begin with.
And before I recommend Mr. Duche, you're next. Governments everywhere have spent a lot of time recently trying to maintain and control healthcare costs. They are one of the big budget busters of budgets across municipalities. In fact, even our own county in their recent collective bargaining agreement has asked employees to chip in a little bit more for their health insurance because they know it's such a valuable commodity. So this move runs contrary to a long-standing an attempt to rein in healthcare costs, because ultimately everybody has to be concerned about that. Mr. Touche.
There seems to be conflicting information. I remember seeing some data on the cost of this, and there's some information about the county attorney's memorandum and his opinion. I, for one, would like to sit back and review that, and I would suggest that we table this pending further review of the information that's out there or isn't out there.
Okay. We'll have the members hear about that.
Make that a move.
Okay. Mr. Touche is moving to table. Is there a second?
Didn't Mr. Stevens already make a motion?
I asked for the motion to
Oh,
table,
okay.
come back to committee.
Oh, yeah, okay. Motion tabled by Ms. McKnight, seconded by Mr. Touche. All in favor of tabling?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
One no. 6? Is it 6?
It's 6-1.
6-1, yeah, so it's tabled. Okay. Motion to adjourn, thank you, Mr. Mariello. Motion to...
Is anybody else in the room like to have something to say?
I'll remind the committee, we don't ask questions to third parties. That's against our procedure, out of order. There's been a long history to explain why we don't do that, so I would recommend you don't ask anyone not on the committee or in the legislature.
Well, I feel like I'm going to do it anyway, because I feel like there's a lot of people here. Does anybody want a minute or two to make a statement while you're here? Okay, thanks.
Okay, motion to adjourn. Ms. McKnight, seconded by Ali McLean. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. We're adjourned.